I was to say with this many students, I should have done the clapping instead of the but I just wanted to say it's 7:01. I'm going to call the Board of Education meeting to order and ask people to stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Next up is our public hearing. And first up to speak are our student government representatives. I don't know if I see Rocky or Mahir here. Oh, there you are. You were hiding back. The room's so full tonight. Welcome.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education, Dr. Jones, and esteemed community members. As always, it's great to be here to share some updates about student government and our efforts to improve the school community. Last week, Mahir and I met with Mr. Silkman to discuss the future direction of the student government and our organizational structure. We recognize the importance of involving the subcommittee chairs more extensively in the decision-making processes, as they are more intimately connected with their specific policy areas and the students that are passionate about these topics. As a result, we have decided to institute a new monthly meeting that will include only the student body president, vice president, and the subcommittee chairs, similar to a cabinet meeting. We are scheduled to hold our first session next week and are hopeful that the future student body leadership will continue with this practice. Additionally, at our recent GHS Executive Committee lunch meeting, Mrs. Stowe and Dr. Jones were able to share some details about the BET's budget decision-making process and possible impacts on our school community. Beyond fewer teachers and class options, we learned that learning resources like textbooks and technology could be impacted, along with professional development endeavors that strengthen our teachers' abilities. All of XCOM and the wider class representatives plan to speak at the BET's public comment on the 26th to express our concerns about growing class sizes and fund electives to explore diverse interests. Thank you for your time, and we're excited to share updates again at the next BOE meeting.
Thanks, Rocky. Is Mahir here? No, I don't see him online either. So if he shows up, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to hear from him as well. So moving on to GEA. I know I saw Lil back there somewhere.
Good evening, Dr. Jones, Board of Ed, GHS teachers, community members. I'd like to make just a brief comment on agenda item number 4, curriculum discussion. GEA surveyed teachers at GHS about midterm and final exams. 166 teachers who responded included all subject areas, school counselors, electives, teachers from Winrose. The questions asked was, in your professional judgment and experience as a high school teacher, which protocol should GHS follow for midterms finals? 95% of the teachers who responded wanted to keep midterm and finals exams as part of the calculation for course grades, with more than 80% wanting to maintain the weighting system as it is for 2024-25 and was for decades before the COVID shutdown. Some teachers even asked for higher weighted percentages. I'd like to share just a few comments from the teachers with you all. If our students are experiencing stress around these exams, the best way we can support their growth is to help them learn strategies to lessen their stress. Seeing and studying for a presentation of the content in a cumulative way deepens overall understanding and assigns meaning to the broad interconnections of content. Referring to the vision of the graduate, I believe that midterms and final exams demonstrate how our students are able to critically interpret, evaluate, synthesize information, and respond to failures and successes with reflection and resilience. These exam grades are also a good source of information as counselors work with students during course selection, and a strong midterm final grade can indicate that a student might be ready for a more rigorous level, while a weaker grade may indicate that a student may not be ready for the course. I also, whoa, my phone just went up, sorry. Like to comment and congratulate Mr. D'Amico. Sorry, my back is to you all. Mr. Reed, Tara Fogel, And Andrew Byrne, math coordinator, science coordinator, Tara, and Mike for math. I looked at your presentation, great K-12 STEM update on their progress and achievement and successes, quite impressive. Tara, your goal 3 mastery of science surpasses 24 goals in all 3 grade levels of measurement and are on pace to meet our 2025 goals. Greenwich High School Science Department exceeded their 2028 target of approximately 86% of our students at or above level, and all great increases in grade 11 and 12. Congratulations to you all. Great job. And of course, all the math and science and classroom teachers who make their lessons fun, relevant with real world applications. And for all my GEA teachers who show up every day and are here to serve our students. Thank you all.
Thanks, Lil. I see me here. Come on up.
Sorry, I'm late.
It's okay.
Hello, Chair Hirsch, Dr. Jones, and members of the board, and happy belated St. Patrick's Day. My name is Mihir, and I'm the Student Body Vice President at Greenwich High School, and I'm happy to be back with you tonight. This month was another great month, especially for class events and fundraising at the high school. Starting off, the freshmen held a bake sale, and they raised a solid amount of money, and it created a precedent where they will continue to grow their fundraising presence. The sophomores are busy at work planning a Jeopardy event for their class on our school's SAT day next Wednesday, where all 10th graders are welcome to compete. On top of this, they're hoping to plan a town-wide 5K walk run this spring. The juniors led a successful Pi Day fundraiser, selling the ability to pie a teacher, including Officer Wallace, Mr. Silkman, and Mr. Pereira. Finally, we seniors held our annual tradition, the Krispy Kreme fundraiser, sadly for the last time. It was a great success, raising over $1,000. As for our student government goals from our mass meetings, our Student Center and Environment Subcommittee will recommend updating a few flags hanging in the Student Center to ensure nations are accurately represented in our Student Center. Our Food Service Committee gathered valuable responses from students in our food service forum, which will help to add more protein options and healthier snacks, as well as supporting our stanchions in our cafeteria. Finally, our Community Service Subcommittee has established a date and will host a community service fair for all Greenwich High School students to connect student volunteers with local nonprofits. This will happen at the end of April on the 24th in the Media Center. Thank you for allowing me to update the board on all that's going on at GHS. I'll be back next month with more great news. Thank you.
Thanks. Here. Next up is our president of PTA Council. And before you take this, the mic, I was just going to say, I see a lot of parents and other students standing outside. I know that we're in a smaller space than usual, but come on in. There's plenty of space in here, even if there aren't necessarily chairs. We'd love to be able to see your faces.
There's one chair there.
Okay, there you go. Take it away, John.
People are afraid of me, apparently. Chair Hirsch, BOE members, Superintendent Dr. Jones, everyone here and everyone online. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm John Fisher, the Greenwich PTA Council President, parent of 2 of the 8,513 great kids in the Greenwich Public Schools. PTA Council is the umbrella organization of the 15 independent PTAs in town. We have just under 4,000 PTA families in Greenwich who invest more than $1.25 million and hundreds of volunteer hours every year to enhance the learning experience of every student and to support our teachers in our schools. It's the home stretch in the budget marathon. We appreciate all the effort and time by the administration and the BOE members. For the benefit of everyone listening and everyone here, the next step in the budget process is the full BET public hearing on the school's budget. Next Wednesday, March 26, 7 p.m. Central Middle School. The BET public hearing is the main stage event. Be there to watch the show if that's your style, and be there to speak if that's your style. We also urge BOE members and especially the Budget Committee members to speak out. At the BET Budget Committee decision day, there were things said. It was said the BET members thought the BOE should do more analysis on the budget before bringing the budget to the BET. No one other than the BOE Budget Committee members can know how much time and analysis you put in, but I'm about 99% sure it was as much as necessary and possible, and that it was diligent, and that it's the right size budget. And we urge you to speak out on that. It was said that there was a decline in enrollment of 143 students. The BOE knows that number is the difference between projected numbers and actual enrollments. But actual enrollment decline was about 100, and enrollment is possibly going up next year. And we urge the BOE to speak out on that. It was said that there are 24 or 25 new FTEs in the budget. The BOE knows there are really only 8.8 new positions, 4 related to increasing pre-K and special ed enrollments, and the rest for the new Positive Pathways program. We urge you to speak out on that. A motion was made to cut $250,000 from the budget, referencing the new Positive Pathways program. But in BOE discussions, you called out that program as one of the smartest investments in the budget. We urge you to speak out on that. It's been said that percentage increase in the budget is too big, but BOE knows contractual salary costs alone with grade and step increases are more than the total budget increase put forward in the BET guidelines. We urge you to speak out on that. What's more, the GPS budget increase is not excessive. At less than 5.1%, the budget increase is actually lower than state average increase, which is 5.41%. And the median increase, 5.31% across, and those averages and those medians are across all the other school districts in Connecticut, as documented by the Association of School Business Officials. With that, I'm going to turn quickly to the agenda. We note the discussion items on the GHS pool and the GHS curriculum. And those seem to be destined for angst and contention. We look forward to hearing about graduation day and the last day of school, as we imagine everyone does. With that, I'd like to close by thanking you for your public service and thanking you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your thoughtful words, as always, John. So next up is community comments, and I'm going to turn the mic over to our secretary. But before I do so, as long as it's okay, we have a few students that had signed up to speak. I'd like to ask if it was okay for them to go first so that they can get back home to do homework or, whatever else that they need to do for school for tomorrow. So do you want to call these students first?
If we are giving the students the first crack at it, the first student speaker is Connor McMahon. There are 3 minutes to speak. And I will give you a 30-second warning so that if there's more to say, you could summarize.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Connor McMahon, and I'm a sophomore at Greenwich High School. I'm a varsity swimmer on the boys swim and dive team, as well as a swimmer on the Greenwich YWCA Dolphins club team. I rise to speak out against the possible GHS pool closure because it will be disastrous for all of the aquatics teams in town, but especially the Greenwich High boys and girls swim and dive teams and the boys and girls water polo teams. Our swim team practices 6 days a week in that pool during the season, which begins in early December and runs until the end of March. With over 40 athletes on the boys swim and dive teams, pool time is already hard to come by and is staggered between the JV and varsity as well as the dive team. It is one of few competition pools in Fairfield County, and we host the majority of the swim meets for that reason. The GHS pool is also used in the winter by the Greenwich Dolphins for national level practices and hosts several important town meets, such as the Greenwich Town Championship. To say that the pool is heavily used is an understatement. We need this pool and cannot afford any decreased pool time. I urge you to find a solution so that our teams will not face any interruptions during the critical fall, winter, and spring aquatic seasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor. The next student we have is Haddon Wood.
Hello and good evening all. My name is Haddon Wood. I'm a senior captain of the Greenwich High School boys swim team, and I've come in front of you today to express my concern for the future pool plans. I've been swimming in the GHS pool since I was 9. It has served as a second home for me, and I've seen firsthand the impact it has had on my teammates and the community who comes together in it. I understand that some parts of the facility need repair, but shutting down the pool for 1 to 2 years at minimum would be catastrophic to all of our aquatics teams. In case you don't know, the GHS pool is home to the most decorated high school sports team in Connecticut, Greenwich High School boys swim and dive team. It's also home to the championship winning boys and girls water polo teams, as well as the championship winning girls swim team. A long-term shutdown would disrupt training and eliminate home meets and games, including the Cardinal tournament for the boys polo team and FCX for both the boys and girls swim teams. On top of that, for athletes pursuing college recruitment, which is a relatively large portion of all the aquatics teams, losing a home facility would deeply impact their performance and exposure. In the fall, we have 2 teams both using the pool, combining to be roughly 60, 70 people. In the winter, roughly 40, and in the spring, roughly 30. Each team needs consistent times, location, and space to train. Without a home pool, our training will be scattered, inconsistent, and potentially inefficient, and our aquatics team success may fall. Finding nearby facilities to hold such a large number of people on such a consistent basis to uphold the high level and quality of training that makes our aquatics teams so successful may be hard to find and simply not realistic. Instead of a full shutdown, I know that together we can find a way to work out a phased renovation plan that would keep our pool operational and allow us for our training to continue. The GHS pool is more than just a place to swim. It's where champions are made and lifelong memories are formed. Without the swim team, I wouldn't be half the man I am today. It's shaped my work ethic, built my confidence, and given me a second family. For the aquatics teams to thrive, we need our pool. Please consider the impact you're having on hundreds of athletes and the GHS aquatics legacy before shutting down our pool. Thank you.
Our first adult speaker is James Waters.
All right. Good evening, members of the Board of Ed. It's good to see you all tonight. And as always, thank you for your service to the town. My name is James Waters, and most of you know me as chairman of the RTM Budget Overview Committee and chairman of the Old Greenwich School Building Committee. Tonight, I speak as an individual about the Greenwich High School pool. The details in the report that you have are disturbing. It looks like a thorough renovation or a new Cardinal pool is going to be required. To many in our town's aquatics community, this report's an inflection point for good or for bad for some of our town's most successful programs. Tonight, you have an opportunity for leadership, a chance to begin to address a clear problem, an opportunity to set an example for how the town handles emergent situations that impact thousands of kids across generations. There are clear risks in being too hasty or not hasty enough. Our GHS aquatics teams are consistently some of the best in the entire school. They've won scores of county and state championships, scores. Thousands have benefited tremendously as people and students because of the excellent aquatics programs. That's been the case for decades, despite safely working out of a substandard facility. Make no mistake, being too hasty tonight will impact that. You see that here around us. Tonight, I urge you to pursue a balanced path. Establish a special committee to guide your decision-making. A credible group needs to go through this report in depth and recommend a course of action before school opens this fall. Having read the report in its entirety, the problems are clear and potentially major. But it's equally clear we don't yet understand the adjacent impacts and that more work needs to be done to decide what to do. A special committee can plug the gaps, consider stakeholder input, flesh out the options in the scope, generate conceptual designs, and understand costs and funding options. The report's a start, but you need more to handle this right. A focus group is critical. I'll volunteer tonight for this effort, and I know many others will too. Assuming we get this group in place now, I think we can answer many of these questions before school opens this fall.
30 seconds.
Let's please head in that direction tonight. It would be disappointing to see this deferred to a future meeting or to make a rash decision based on incomplete information. Thanks for your consideration, and please count me in to help.
Our next speaker is Terry Lowe.
Dr. Jones, members of the board. I'm Terry Lowe. I've been the swimming coach at Greenwich High School for 57 years. I also started the water polo program in 1975 and coached that team for 40 years. I've literally spent decades of my life at the GHS pool. Unfortunately, the report that is being presented tonight was made without anyone once speaking with me or any swimming, diving, or water polo coach or teacher. After more than 5 decades of service, I would like to think that my experience and expertise is of some value in these discussions. Instead, historically, projects are undertaken without consulting coaches and mistakes have been made. Most recently, over the past 2 years, all or part of our pool deck has been replaced twice, one mistake replacing another. As the report indicates, there is pooling due to uneven application, but moreover, the surface is slippery when wet. Coaches now have developed squeegee skills to minimize the problem. Despite the problem in the new pool deck, the Greenwich High School pool is actually the envy of nearly every team we face. With its starting blocks at the deep end moved 3 decades ago for safety reasons, after several years of my request to former facilities managers, it now has the safest and best starting depth of any pool in the state. Visiting divers love our incredibly safe diving area with deeper water than many pools in the state and its high ceiling height, which meets National High School Federation rules. In fact, contrary to the statement in the report, the world's #1 manufacturer of diving boards sold the school a new board just 2 years ago, the diving area meeting their requirements. As for the beam cited in the document beyond the plunge zone, though I'm not normally there for diving practice, I know that only one way that even Olympic divers could touch that beam is to treat the board like a trampoline, jumping in such a way that no diver would ever do for an actual dive. We need to make sure that divers know that practice is banned. Supervision of pools is mandatory and necessary to keep swimmers, divers, and water polo players safe. This is true in even the newest and fanciest pools. We can and must make sure the pool equipment is used safely. The beam location is such that it will forever be yards away from any actual dive, even for the All-American divers that our team traditionally has. As for concerns about the deck, yes, our deck space is shared by the athletes and our spectators. This is true for all the sites of every state divisional trials and finals held within the last week. It is also the case for the much newer Greenwich YMCA pool. The original 1960s plan for the GHS pool had a separate diving balcony, a separate spectator balcony. Cuts after bids for the pool came in nearly 50% over original estimates made that the balcony be cut from the plans. Would have been nice to have it. The narrow deck on the north side of the pool, having been on the building committee for the 1997 renovation, I can tell you that it took a request to the state for a variance of the required deck width to get approval for the width of the existing deck. It is a low traffic area opposite the spectator bleachers and has created no problem.
30 seconds.
Moreover, the 1997 renovation included lighting that was like a sunny day. Due to the replacement bulbs in over the pool, then the lighting was replaced recently. That the GHS pool remains as the pool with the brightest lighting of any pool in which we compete, including those used for state championship meets. Although the computer scoreboard stand is not ADA compliant, if there were a need, an extension cord could bring the computer system down to the often used deck level scoring table. In essence, the pool, both for swimming and diving, is functional and safe to be used for whatever period is required for the development of proposal and construction of a replacement, and it must be done without interruption to our highly successful aquatics programs. There is much in this document that needs to be discussed. The GHS coaches are ready and willing to engage in a thorough and thoughtful discussion of how we can continue to plan for the future while also continuing to allow GHS athletes to compete at the highest level. Thank you for your consideration.
Our next speaker is Mike McMahon. After you is Janet McMahon.
It's a family affair. Good evening, everyone. My name is Janet McMahon. I think most of you on that side of the table know me, but for those of you who don't, I'm speaking tonight as a parent of two competitive swimmers, one of whom is currently a swimmer that spoke earlier of the Greenwich High School boys swim and dive team, and a daughter who will be on the Greenwich High School girls swim team in a year and a half. My kids also swim for the YWCA Dolphins Club swim team. While I'm a member of the RTM in District 8, as well as a delegate to the RTM Education Committee and PTAC Facilities Chair, the views expressed tonight are my own. I'm deeply disturbed by the suggestion that the Greenwich High School pool be closed for any length of time, but the 1 to 2 years as recommended in the capital request is a non-starter. Any closure of any length from September through June would be extremely detrimental to all club aquatics teams in town, but especially the Greenwich High School boys and girls swim, dive, and water polo teams. The GHS boys and girls swim, dive, and water polo teams all use the pool heavily from September through June. These are elite championship teams, with the boys swim and dive team having just won its 54th FCX last week and 49th LLs on Tuesday. They're the most decorated high school athletic team in Connecticut, and some would argue in the country. In addition, the Greenwich Dolphins, another elite swim team, rents out the GHS pool for practices from November through March. The Dolphins is a nationally ranked club team that has produced alumni participating in many Olympic trials. These high-performing athletes cannot afford to lose any pool time. I urge you to consider not doing any pool renovations during September through June and closing the pool for the summer months only. I'm also concerned that I'm only now hearing about the apparent pool issues despite being an education committee delegate for 8 years and PTAC facilities chairwoman for the past 2 years. I consider myself pretty well informed on town capital projects and issues, but was completely blindsided by this, especially given that the pool recently underwent some repairs this past summer. Why weren't some or any of these issues addressed then? Why are the aquatics parents only now hearing about this and not in the fall of 2024 when the issues allegedly began? Why is this being considered an emergency, even though many of these issues have existed since 1997, almost 30 years ago, with no real injury or harm? While I agree that the pool issues should be addressed, I remain
30 seconds.
I remain unconvinced that it is an emergency and a pool shutdown outside of September through June must be avoided at all costs. If it cannot be avoided, then a backup pool plan must be put forward for all of the affected teams and clubs. Again, shutting the pool down without any plan would be negligent and devastating to all of the aquatics teams in town. Thank you for your consideration. Go Big Red and go Dolphins.
Our next speaker is Michelle Bucaria.
Good evening, board members. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Michelle Bucaria, and I'm parent of 2 sons who've been part of the GHS boys swim and dive team for the past 6 years and plan to be next year as well. The swim program's been a critical component of both my sons' abilities to fully participate in GHS's mission. It's through this program that they have truly learned and lived what personal integrity and interpersonal responsibility are all about. I'm sure that the other parents would agree that that's pretty likely for their kids as well. I'm thankful to GHS and to Coach Lowe for providing them this crucial opportunity. Continued operation of this program is not only important to us and our kids' personal development and well-being, but I believe is also very important to the school as well to help it achieve its mission. The boys swim and dive team represents, and I'm not the first one to say this, arguably the most successful team at GHS, led by the most successful coach in the state. And I would argue much broader than that. I just don't have the facts. They've been first or second place at the state competition level, from what I can tell, every year since 1969, with over 200 All-American swimmers since 1970. It's truly an unbelievable record, and I don't believe that any other team can claim that. I'd ask that the board works to identify a plan that does not limit our kids' ability to participate and compete in a way that's convenient for anyone who wishes to be a part of the team, and does not limit anyone because of financial ability to travel to some other random location. I'd ask that that any remediation plan is focused on what truly does need to be repaired, and that those remediations take place in the off season as others have said, so that the kids can continue to participate in the programs on site during the season. There's no one who knows that pool better than Coach Lowe, so I ask that we defer to Coach's judgment on what the plan really should be. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth DeHaven.
Good evening, Dr. Jones, Chair Chair Hirsch. You know,
I look just like him.
yeah,
Clearly.
don't you? And other board members and everyone here. I'm Elizabeth DeHaven. I am the very proud aunt of 3 Cardinal Aquatics participants and mom of an incoming Cardinal Aquatic participant, hopefully, from Western Middle School. I'm here tonight to support everything that has been said before me, as well as make some comments on behalf of my sister-in-law, Kara Mendelson. Kara has a son who is a senior, a daughter who's a junior, and a daughter who is a freshman at GHS. All of them are swimmers and water polo players, and she is just here to say how wonderful these teams are and how important they are to her kids. The coaches are incredible, and being part of the swim and water polo programs at GHS has been life-changing for her kids and their teammates. It has taught them the value of hard work and taught them to be resilient. They love their coaches and their teammates and are always so happy after their GHS practices. She's asking you to please let these programs continue for now until there's a good plan in place for these programs to be able to be continued and uninterrupted. Thank you.
Our final speaker of the evening is Frances Nobe.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Frances Wunobe, and I'm honored to be here tonight representing a slightly different topic. I'm here to represent Girl Scouts. So I'll switch to that topic, but thank you for all coming out. Along with Ms. Lori Mulligan and Ms. Liz Fitzroy, we volunteer our time to run the Girl Scout program here in the town of Greenwich. Girl Scouts in Greenwich is a true community effort with over 300 Girl Scouts and nearly as many volunteers in every public and private school in town, except Brunswick. We're united by a shared commitment to serve others and make a positive impact in our community. Girl Scouts is about so much more than just fun and adventure. It's about building courage, confidence, and character, and using those qualities to make the world a better place. Our program is open to rising kindergartners through grade 12, encouraging them to try new things, make lasting friendships, and explore SOLE, STEM, the outdoors, life skills, and entrepreneurship. One of our most well-known entrepreneurship programs is Girl Scout Cookies. Starting this Saturday, you'll see Girl Scouts in your neighborhood earning funds for their troops. And on Sunday, please wave to us as we proudly march in the St. Patrick's Day Parade wearing our Girl Scout green. Tonight, I want to personally invite you to a very special event. On Sunday, April 6th from 2 to 4 p.m., Greenwich Girl Scouts and the League of Women Voters Greenwich will co-host our annual Women in Government Expo at Town Hall. This event is open to the public free of charge for our youngest constituents, rising kindergartners through high school. We'll be joined by some inspiring women in local government, including Select Woman Rabin, Select Person McGuigan, and members of the RTM, BET, and hopefully BOE. Connecticut Secretary of State Stephanie Thomas had so much fun last year that she will stop by again. This is a fantastic opportunity to learn about civic engagement, the importance of service, and how we can all contribute to the betterment of our town. We'd love to see you there, whether as an attendee, a supporter, or a special guest. For more information, please visit bit.ly WIG 2025. And thank you so much for all you do for our students.
And I see we have one more speaker who has arrived, Julie Freniers from Greenwich Alliance.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Jones, Chairwoman Hirsch, members of the Board of Education. My name is Julie Feriniars, and I am the Executive Director of the Greenwich Alliance for Education. I am pleased to read the progress made in the areas of math and science, and I look forward to the presentation tonight. Another science opportunity worth mentioning are the middle school science teams funded through a Reaching Out grant from the Greenwich Alliance. With this funding, Maria Bonanno expanded science teams to all 3 middle schools this year. John Lodato taught the EMS, who coached the EMS team. Yamanu Ramadas coached the WMS team, and Maria coached both the CMS and the Greenwich High School team. According to Maria, this level of competition in Science Bowl stimulates the type of thinking, coordination, science, strategic planning, and breadth of knowledge often needed in certain think on your feet STEM areas such as emergency room doctors, aerospace engineers, and astronauts. The science team is not limited to top contenders. There are beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels of players. We have an open door policy, which means that anyone can be part of the team. Many times, students enjoy being moderators, scorekeepers, or timekeepers during practices. This year, we had 6 teams from Greenwich, 3 EMS, 2 Western Middle School, 1 CMS, and the Greenwich High School science team earned 3rd place. CMS finished the tournament in 4th, while EMS 2 and EMS 3 finished 7th and 8th respectively. Congratulations to all participants and coaches. Reaching Out grants have all been submitted to us for the 25-26 year, are now in the review process by the Reaching Out Grants Committee, and all applicants will be visited in the next month. Recommendations from the committee will be voted upon by the Alliance Board in May. The Alliance is beginning a strategic plan, and the environmental scan was recently completed. Thanks to everyone who participated in focus groups or had discussions with our consultants. As your education foundation, we welcome additional feedback as we do our work over the next few months. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and see you at next week's budget meeting. Thank you.
Big thank you to the Alliance as always. Next up on our agenda are monthly reports, and we start with the superintendent's report. Dr. Jones?
Thank you, Chair Hirsch. I just have a couple of items tonight. First of all, we are in this room tonight because CMS will be having their musical this weekend, The Addams Family. So get your tickets early because it will fill up. Next week, we have WMS, which is having Freaky Friday. And again, that will be in their auditorium next weekend, not this coming weekend, the following. The District Art Show also kicks off next week, so you can watch for that in the Friday news down on Greenwich Avenue. On April 5th, the huge day of jazz will be happening for all of our student musicians at the high school, which is fabulous. And I also just want to reiterate that next Wednesday, we will be here in the auditorium for the budget hearing, and that's a really, really important night for the schools. But I also want to remind those of you who are used to submitting written comment, the BET has just switched to an online form, and so you're not supposed to email them, or they may not see your email. So we will run that again in tomorrow's Friday news at the online form again. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your update. And I see a lot of our swimmers, divers, and
You should tell them
beyond
we're going to
are
talk about it first on the agenda.
heading out. Yeah, I was going to remind them, we are first on the agenda, but if they run home now, they could probably log on. But I want to thank them for all attending this evening. There's still a whole slew of our swimmers in the audience. I shouldn't just say swimmers because there's also divers and water polo players. So next up are the report of our officers, committees, and liaisons. Does anybody have a report that they'd like to start with? Mike?
I'll be brief so we can get back to the swimming topic, but they want to update everybody on the Old Greenwich report from the Old Greenwich Building Committee. It's a very exciting time. We are likely going out to bid next week, finally on that project. Hold April 23rd on your calendar for the groundbreaking ceremony. And we are also in the process of the final permitting. If you have 3 hours, James Waters is happy to talk you through that fascinating process. And all the ins and outs of going to all the different town town departments to get sign offs on. But we're well on our way, and it looks like we'll be all set for full-time construction this summer on the Old Greenwich project.
Well, that's exciting. Are there any other people who have a committee updates or liaison updates? Anyone? Anyone? Ms. Costin?
Well, if you drove by Orchard Street and saw the activity on the field, you'll know that our construction and site work is underway. And it goes in fits and starts, but we're tracking on budget and on time as well. So I wanted to just give that update to the board. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Anyone else with a committee update, liaison update? No. I would say I sit on the committee for EMAC, and we met last week, and I don't know, went through a whole bunch of things, including geothermal wells and all sorts of other projects, solar panels for Central and beyond, and always happy to continue to support the work of that committee. They've got a lot of good input, but nothing too exciting to report there. Yes, Mike? That was my next one. So Sophie Coven and I are both sitting on the Havemeyer Committee. As of now, we have met in executive session and spoken with individuals who submitted RFPs, are looking to do some additional work to learn a little bit more about some of the financial aspects. Once that has been presented to those who the powers that be, I'll have a little bit more to share. But as I said, as of now, we've mostly met in executive session, so there's not much to share there. But certainly have consistently reminded the committee that as soon as we have the opportunity, the board would like to get some information, and we have a discussion of our own to have. Anyone else? No? Okay. With that, it's what you've all been waiting for, at least those who are sitting here. If there is anyone still outside, there's plenty of seats. Come on in. We're going to be talking all sorts of aquatics. So next up on our agenda are discussion items. First up is the amendment to the FY26 capital request for the GHS pool repairs. Yes, I know. It's and I think that is for Ben Brannion. Is he online? I see him. All right.
Good evening, everyone. I'm joined by our facilities director, Dan Watson, and also architect Mike Fortuna. Mike will be sharing a slide deck. So if I can ask Dan and Mike to go live. And while they're getting ready to do that, it's a significant report. I really encourage everyone to read it. We also attempted to do a summary. The first 2 pages is just an overview. The last time you saw this was at an oral update in February. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike to go through the slide deck, and then we can open up to the discussion points that everyone wants to get to.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Am I able to share my screen? Let me give that a shot.
We'll make sure that you can. Hold on one moment.
you
We'll
should
reach
be
out.
able to,
Word
Mr.
clerk.
Fortuna. Okay, perfect. So thank you. Thanks for having me. I think I'm more thankful for being remote because I don't think I'm the most popular guy in Greenwich right now. But I think what's important to understand in this report is that it's strictly in the context of an analysis for code, acceptable standards, the approvals that are in place from the building department and the health department to the extent we can determine them. It has nothing to do with operations or, it's clear that Coach Lowe and the aquatics programs are second to none, and nobody wants to see them have to take a pause in this pool. But my charge was to analyze the pool, identify the issues so they can be dealt with. And that's what I've attempted to do in the report. The workarounds to operate the pool safely is part of the discussion. There may be ways to mitigate risk. For example, the plunger you put in to kill the pump suction if somebody were to get entrapped. That's all great. Doesn't meet the code, and so it was identified. So there's always a balance between safe operations and full compliance. And so the goal is always full compliance. In some of these older facilities, it's not always possible, but that's always the goal. So that's what this report attempts to do. So we got our first look at this pool right after New Year's. We came down with Connecticut Custom Aquatics, who does your pool maintenance. And the initial call was more of a kind of a maintenance type look at things. There were some reported leaks at the gutter line. There was some loose and broken tile. And so we took a look at the facilities group was able to get us some drawings from 97 renovation and a couple from the original construction in the 60s. So we got a good feel of how this thing was built. And basically what happened in the 90s was there was an overbuild on top of the existing pool to get the water depth about a foot deeper. The result of that was a large curb around the perimeter of the pool and a platform where the diving board sits. And what happens is whenever you do that is you end up with a lot of horizontal seams in the concrete. There's a bentonite water stop in there that, bentonite is a clay material. It deteriorates and dries up over time. And so what's probably happening is that bentonite is no longer swelling and stopping the leaks. So leaks finding its way through the seams and out of the pool. That's not atypical. And there are different ways of addressing that. But that was the initial call, was to take a look at things like that. But then we were asked to take a full look in the context of the building code, the health code, and the Virginia Graham-Baker Act. So when we took a look at the drains, so for those who are not familiar with the VGB Act, it was enacted in 2008 after an entrapment death in a swimming pool. It's a good law. There's no question it saved lives. But it was a bit of a circus in 2008 because there was a mandate to update all pools across the country with a very short time frame to do that. Greenwich was kind of ahead of the curve, got in there early, did by all accounts a good job of replacing the frames and grates in a manner that was understood to be compliant at the time. And in 2021, they updated the rules saying that when you replace a cover, there's a whole bunch of other things that you have to do with it. They call it SOFA, the suction outlet fitting assembly, which is the grate, the frame, the hardware, the sump, everything has to comply. And that's where you run into a little trouble with full compliance. So this diagram on the right is your current setup, and on the left is what would be a fully compliant sump. So that's fixable. And the bigger issue is 3 of the 4 pipes that you have to these drains are completely clogged and not seeing any flow. So all of your flow is going through one drain. It may be possible to route those out and line them, but it's equally possible that when you route them out, you blow out an elbow under the pool, and then you have no choice but to replace it. So it's a little bit precarious. The other issue is the way the piping is arranged. So this bottom diagram is the way piping and drains are required to be configured under today's codes. When you built the pool in the 60s, this is how they were built. So with 3 of these 4 drains clogged, you're getting no flow out of the others. Whereas in the other arrangement, the newer arrangement, you divert flow and you have a better chance of maintaining flow. But the pool was designed, one of the health code requirements is an 8-hour turnover, and you're right at 8 hours with your flow rate in a 6-inch pipe, which has a 7.2 feet per second velocity, which exceeds the state requirement of 6 feet per second. So if you were to replace all this, you would need to go to an 8-inch pipe, reconfigure the piping, that gets you down under the velocity flow rate. So it's kind of a long-winded way to say that even if you fix the sump, you still have a drain problem, or you have a piping problem. So one of the things that I would advise against is fixing one thing without fixing the other, because 2 years from now, you could have a pipe failure. Then every dollar you spent fixing the drain sumps, you're gonna throw away because you're gonna dig up the pipe. So those are the kinds of decisions that are going to need to be made on how you approach this. So this is kind of a major issue because it's a federal law. There's no state code modification process to allow this to continue. It's a federal law that you have to comply with. And so in some way, shape, or form, it's an issue that needs to be dealt with in the short term. The next issue is the diving hopper. So the state of Connecticut, going back as far as 1970s. So when you built the pool in the 60s, there were no building codes, there was no health code related to pools. I think we can all confidently say it was code compliant because there was no code. So it was built to the standards at the time. But in 97, when the renovation happened, you were required to meet the state building code, which adopted the state health code, which adopted the NCAA standards for diving hoppers. So even though you're not an NCAA facility, the state health code adopted that as the standard because it's an established standard that gets updated based on measurable criteria. They do statistical analysis in pools, and so they have established a standard that Connecticut has adopted. So what you see in the light red is the profile of a code compliant, an NCAA compliant diving hopper and with overhead clearance. So when the pool got made a foot deeper, as Coach Lowe said, you've got one of the deepest pools around, but you still came up a little short in the back. It's questionable if there's any risk there. Not many people end up behind the board, but nevertheless, that's the requirement. And the bigger issue is overhead. So the requirement is 16 feet 5 inches from the tip of the board to the overhead clearance for 16 foot 5 inches beyond the tip of the board. You've got this giant steel beam, a little over 12 feet high, about 6 feet away. So can a diver hit it? I don't know. Probably not. But that's not the analysis I make. The analysis I make is, does it meet the code? And the answer is no. You've also got some miscellaneous duct work and piping and sprinkler pipes and such up in the hopper. But the reality is the entire roof deck is lower than 16 foot 5 inches above the board. So that's not a code compliant diving arrangement. So right now the board is hoisted, so people can't use it. Somebody will have to make a decision what to do with diving, but raising the roof is, as you can imagine, a big job. But the only other alternative is to build another diving hopper somewhere on the property, off the property, someplace. So then we get to the decks. When I evaluate based on the health code, there's sort of two categories of health compliance. One is safety. So things like the entrapment at a drain or the overhead clearance on a diving board, those directly impact safety. Then there's this other category of cleanliness and bacteria and that sort of thing. So some of these deck issues are more in that category. So you can imagine somebody coming off the street in the winter with salt and mud on their feet onto the pool decks. It happens all the time. I'd say 50% or more of the pools we evaluate, that's the way it is, because that's the way they were built back then. But it's a problem and should be addressed. And then there's some bleachers on the end of the pool that, as I understand it, are sometimes used by the swimmers, which is fine, and sometimes used by spectators, which is not fine. So, the health code is clear about an absolute separation between spectators and swimmers, and you don't have that. The other issue is this narrowing of the deck, which under, on day-to-day operations is definitely not a problem. There's plenty of room to maneuver through there for swimmers during meets or practice. The issue is if somebody were on a stretcher being tended to by a medic, that medic needs to walk alongside the stretcher to tend to the person on it. And that can't happen. You can't have a stretcher and a person walk through there. So, that's why the health code requires a 5 foot. It's not about, having enough space for a meet. It's safety for somebody on a stretcher. And then, the result of raising the pool deck and building this curb up a foot is this platform that sort of bisects the deck. So, it's not a major problem from an operational standpoint. It functions well. It achieves the goal of getting deeper water and still having a diving board up on that platform. But it does bisect the deck, so getting a lift in to change the light bulbs and getting equipment in and out, or if there's an emergency in this end of the pool and the ambulance responds to this side or this side and comes this way, then they got to double back and just takes time. And so, there's a lot of what ifs and worst case scenarios, but that's what the codes are built around. It's when we were all kids, there were no car seats, but they caught up. It's just the way it is. So those are the primary deck issues. And then we've got the kind of nuts and bolts, the filter plant. You've got 480 volt electrical equipment that doesn't have proper code clearance in front of the panel. And then you've got these filter tanks that are deteriorating and need to be replaced. So this is not an ideal situation. There's also pressure relief on these that could spray water. So it's just not a great situation. Those filters need to be replaced sooner rather than later. Ideally, this, if it all happens in this room and this electrical gear stays, that pad should be cut back so you get clearance. There's a National Electrical Code requirement for clearance in front of an electrical panel so somebody could work safely and not, trip and fall into the panel while they're working on it. So that's another code issue that needs to be dealt with. And then there's the pool backwash, filter backwash right now, which is basically chlorinated gray water is going into your sanitary or your storm system through a brook. The code requires that to go to sanitary sewer. So that's like the water coming out of the filter is kind of like your dishwasher or washing machine water with chlorine in it. So ideally, that's not going into a brook, that's going into a sanitary sewer system. So those are really the big issues, and there's a lot of, kind of minor low-hanging fruit like signage and some striping in the pool that's required. But these are kind of the big issues that need to be dealt with the diving hopper, the most daunting. There's a number of ways to deal with the drains and the pipings. A lot of it hinges on what you decide to do with the diving. Because if I go back to the section for a moment. You have a little extra room at the bottom of the pool where you could, in theory, get some piping laid on top of that and pour a new floor. So you don't have to chop up much of your pool bottom. That's one option. Another option that we explored is to do some select demolition. It's a 5 foot thick concrete pool floor because you have a hydrostatic pressure. So there's two ways to deal with hydrostatic pressure is the groundwater lifting the pool up out of the ground. So you either do it with dead mass, so you build enough weight that it can't get lifted out of the ground, or you do relief in the drains and let the groundwater come into the pool. Your groundwater is contaminated, so that's not a good option. So this was built as a dead mass pool. So we don't want to punch through that. So we would do kind of surgical demolition in the pool bottom, only as much as necessary to get the sumps and the pipes in. and then concrete it all back in. But it's really the overhead clearance that needs to be dealt with. And, there's, if you were gonna try and do it within the footprint of the existing building, you could introduce some new columns and new beams to span differently, get it out of this stretch, or try and raise this whole thing. There's a variety of ways to look at it. So we tried to kind of bracket the report, in worst case scenario in terms of building a new pool. And I know there's a lot of complications on your site adding onto the building with the soils you have out there. So, but that's a whole nother conversation, how you deal with it. My charge was to identify the issues. So I think I'll leave it at that and answer any questions.
Dr. Mercanti Anthony, and then Ms. Costin.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, this is just a meeting for the board. Sorry. You are more than welcome to submit a question to one of us to try to help. You want an answer?
So I read the report cover to cover, and so I'm trying to make sure I understand the age, at what point different codes came into play. So let me make sure I understand that, because I heard a couple of different things. So it sounds like everything was at code when it was built, and then in 2021 I heard the one code changed, but I'm not sure about when did, if I'm right about that, could you tell me like when the NCAA standards were adopted for diving, and maybe the electrical code, and maybe when some of these other changes happened?
Yeah, so the first state building code was adopted in 1972. So shortly after you built your facility, the state adopted the first state building code. At the same time, they adopted the public health swimming pool regulations. So when you built the pool in 68, there were no issues. There was no code. So you built it to kind of what everybody was doing at the time. Where you ran into trouble is in the 1997 renovation. Once you change the volume of the swimming pool, it's considered a major renovation, and you don't have to meet all the components of the building code, but you do have to meet all the components of the health code for anything you modify. So in 97, the public health code would have been applicable, and in the public health code, they adopted the current NCAA regulations, which at the time, I'm old enough to have been doing this in 97, so I happen to have all of these in my files, but in 1997, the applicable NCAA regulations would have been the ones that were adopted in 1991, which has the 16'5" requirement. So that's what should have been met in 97. The 2008 and the 2021 standards were the Virginia Graham Baker federal law, not state building code, not state health code. That was the Virginia Graham Baker federal law, applicable only to the drains. It has nothing to do with diving hoppers or pool depth or decks or anything else. It's strictly about the drains.
Right, so when we when we modeled the pool in 97, it met the 97 code, or it didn't because that had changed in 91?
Yeah, my assessment is it did not meet the current codes. In 97, you put the pool out of compliance.
Laura?
So I'm going to cut to the chase. I think what gave us the most heartburn is the 12 to 24 months, because God almighty, I mean, is there any way to work any quicker? I mean, obviously, this is a facility that gets a tremendous amount of use, and it just seems unimaginable to me that we're building a school in 24 months, that you can't build a pool sooner than that. I mean, it's crazy. Is there any way to move quicker?
Well, I think building the pool is only part of the equation. you know, you need to design it, bid it, build it, and, you know, from a municipal standpoint, you've got rules you need to follow. You know, if this was Yale University, they could write a check tomorrow and start construction, but you know, you've got a process you need to follow. I think, depending on what you decide to do, it could be quicker, it could take longer. You know, if you're gonna build a brand new facility, for example, somewhere, then the overall time from the day you start design to the day you occupy the facility, I think 2 years is not unreasonable. If you're gonna try and do a phased renovation of this facility, and you're only going to try and do the work in the summer for 3 months at a time, I would say you'd probably extend it out 4 or 5 years. So it's all, you know, there's a whole lot of analysis that needs to be done, but it needs to be done based on what your approach is gonna be. You know, the other reality is you're looking at a pool that's, you know, 50 years old, and you've got to decide if you're gonna spend millions of dollars on this facility, do you really want to spend it on a pool that's 50 years old? Or does it make sense to build something new? You know, that concrete in the ground has a life cycle, and you're probably well into it. And so you probably don't want to spend a whole bunch of money on a pool envelope and equipment and cut it into 50-year-old concrete that's known to be seeping chlorinated water. So, you know, one of the first things we do if we initiate a design process is we go in there and core the pool and take samples of the concrete. We do chloride testing. You know, we do the analysis to see if it's worth building on that pool shell. You know, we could, with some physical testing, we can determine the quality of the concrete and how long that concrete's gonna last. We don't have the benefit of that right now. You know, shortly after we made our first visit, the swim season started, so we couldn't go in there and do any physical analysis. But that would be step one, to give you, you know, the information you need to start the process. But, you know, I think, you know, architects, contractors, you know, we could typically move pretty quickly. But, you know, there's got to be a design phase, public input. As Coach Lowe said, we need to talk to the participants. You know, this study was done kind of in a vacuum based on codes and standards. It wasn't based on programming or need. You know, if you're going to spend a lot of money on a new facility, there may be things that you'd like to have that this pool doesn't have. You might have the opportunity to incorporate. So we haven't looked at any of that yet. We just did the code analysis. So, you know, that's kind of a long way of answering your question, but 2 years, I think, is not an unreasonable time frame for a major capital project. Start to finish, not 2 years of construction.
Sophie?
Is it working now? I think it is. Okay. Thank you very much. I think actually those comments were really helpful because they highlighted that we really need a path forward. And a key part of that, I mean, first of all, I'd like to say it's really nice to see so many people come out tonight. And what's really important is community engagement and community feedback, and getting all of the experts involved. And certainly we are so fortunate that we have had coaches who've been with us for decades and families that have been multiple generations swimming in this pool. So I really feel like, to me, the next obvious step is to move to a feasibility analysis of trying to think about both, you know, what is the useful life of this pool? Can it be repaired? What repairs make sense? And also, how do we maintain the tremendous legacy of the Greenwich High School swimming, diving, and water polo for decades to come? So that would be my suggestion. And we can continue to talk about this report, but realistically, I think a community conversation involving the key players is probably the best way to move this forward.
I was gonna say, I second that. You know, student and staff health and safety, our coaches are of our utmost importance. We certainly wouldn't want an accident to occur. We certainly don't want to, you know, create additional issues. And I had a lot of questions when reading through this about costs, timing, renovation, alternate locations, if we needed them for timing and state grants, any, public-private partnerships, a ton of other things. I also know, we'd have to discuss FAR if we were trying to increase sizing or raise the roof and anything. So I second, my request was also going to be the same as Sophie to see if we had funding to do, or interest in being able to do a feasibility study. I don't really, I live with a swimmer and a triathlete who was coached under Coach Lowe, but that's neither here nor there. And I certainly wouldn't want to see this pool shut down. I know it's a benefit to the community, to our students, athletes, and others. So, even our youngest members of, our schools come in and use it. Kathleen?
Yeah, I completely agree. It sounds like we should have a plan for the future. I mean, the pool is 50 years old, so perhaps we should have thought of this earlier. But nevertheless, it sounds like our community is doing fine for now, and we should continue to move forward with our awesome teams, enjoying the rest of their, the time there. I just had one quick question. What happens to the diving team? Like, where are they right now? Okay, and then they're done. So, okay, so that part's okay. Okay, fine. All right, I just wanted to make sure we weren't forgetting about that. Okay, so
that's part of the questions on feasibility, like what can't we do? And we have to make sure, there's other options if, I don't want to see that pool closed, Yes, I know it's not always our choice. We learned that in the building we're sitting in right now, so.
Hey, Karen, can I add something?
Yes, well, Kathleen, were you?
Oh, sorry.
Then-
I just want to put
no,
myself
go
in
ahead,
line.
Cody.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm fine.
No.
Go ahead, Cody. I'm good.
Then Cody.
Sorry, it's always awkward. Yeah, I don't know if anyone would disagree with this, but is it fair for us board members to sort of give a little guidance or make a statement along the lines of the two things that stand out to me are anything that can be done that gets out of the way of the diving team or that enables the diving team to be able to operate in the pool, we should do whatever we can to keep that going. And then anything that can be done from a planning standpoint to make sure that the pool is not closed from September to June, like everything should be geared around planning around that. I don't know. That's my impression from this, but I wasn't sure if that's like something that everyone agrees with or if there's other ideas. If it was something that everybody agreed with, it might be helpful guidance for everybody listening and, the professionals involved of just what direction we want to push this.
I'm going to turn the mic over to Dr. Jones to discuss the possibilities of feasibility and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, I think that feasibility study is the normal pathway that we do all of our projects. And the other thing that makes that, I think, really good is we're getting the first step out of the way. If you have a random committee, you would have to come back and then still do feasibility and then still go to a building committee. And so it would probably add a year and a half to this whole process. And for those that don't realize what happens in feasibility, it is great because you usually have a team that's working. They would meet with coaches, they would meet with some of the swimmers, find out what is working, what's not working, but then they look at all of those technical aspects. And I think that's what Michael was just talking about, is doing that testing of the concrete. All of that would happen with experts who know what they're doing at the table with us. So we do believe we've kind of been working a little bit behind the scenes, trying to figure out how we could make something like this work, what would be the next steps. And we do have some funding, and then you feel free to chime in and speak to that, where we could get this started really quickly and get going with feasibility.
I can't speak for everybody in the board. I can only speak for myself, but I'm pretty sure that I can speak for most of the audience that they'd love to see us move forward as quickly as possible. I'm sure the board members who we've heard from would also probably agree. It's a lot of incredible programming and support that takes place in the natatorium, and we don't want to lose the opportunity there, or time, I should say, as well. So, I mean, I guess if I can speak on behalf of giving you the direction to move forward to start the ability to do feasibility, that would be fantastic. And then you can reach out, let us know what we need to do. Yep. Mike,
I think we should, I think we should speak a little more strongly, honestly. I think there's a sense of meeting here. I mean, speaking personally, I was surprised that so many people were here because I read this report and it never dawned on me that we would close the pool. So I don't know why everybody got so riled up. I understand why, but I want to get to the bottom of how that happened, in all honesty.
it says it in the report.
Well,
Many
but
times.
it says it. I know, I read the report, but I also read in the report, exactly. But I also read in the report that we were up to code when all this was constructed. I read that it was one of the deepest pools in the state. I read that the code changed for the federal law in 2021. It never occurred to me that we would act as a board in any kind of emergency to this end. So I think personally that we should take a sense of the meeting on this because I think it sounds like we're all saying that a feasibility.
I'm happy to
makes the
take
most
a sense of the meeting, but
Yeah.
we can't take an actual vote because it's listed as a discussion
That's
item.
why
I
we
guess
should
we
take
can
a
make a
feasibility.
motion to try to, I have to double check Robert's rules if we can make a motion to move it to an action item. But I'm going to let Dr. Jones.
We're not really taking an action, right? We're just forming a committee.
That's
So-
well, that sense
Yeah.
of meeting on forming a feasibility committee.
But
what
I'm
is-
going to,
yeah.
Dr. Jones had something she wanted to say first.
Well, I just want to remind the board that generally these decisions, we didn't come here tonight saying that we're going to close the pool. I mean, I want to be really clear, but you also need to understand that since I've been here in the 6 years, we've had Cardinal Stadium condemned, CMS was condemned. We've had North Mianus, the ceiling fell, that building was closed. We had to move kids for the rest of the school year. We just got Western Fields back open. None of those were Board of Ed decisions. And so I just want to be very transparent that at any time, you could have somebody at the state that changes their position and they have a different opinion of what we can and can't do. We have risk management that's involved. There are a lot of people that weigh in on these decisions. So we hear you loud and clear. We all want our kids to be able to swim and be in the pool. But I just want to be cautious that it's not always our decision. And the first 4 that I dealt with were not our decision.
This is a great teachable moment for the kids that only a government-run organization could have an issue like this emerge and take 2 years to potentially fix. By the way, I looked up on ChatGPT the oldest operating pools in existence, and there's a pool in England, Cleveland Pools, that was built in 1815 and is still running.
I appreciate that you're a history nerd like myself.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
So 50 years sounds old, but it might actually be kind of young.
Being that I'm 50 plus, I'll appreciate
I
that
think it
comment.
sounds
Thank
really
you.
young. Let me add that.
He's the youngest
Appreciate
member
that.
of the board, to be
And
fair.
I will say I have a pool in my backyard that is my age and it shows it for sure, as I hope I don't, but Ms. Costin?
So just because Dr. Jones reminded us about the town risk manager who are they aware of the pool situation?
We've been working with all of the agencies, Public Works, the risk management, the state health. So far, we're okay, but that's why I just want to be cautious that, people can weigh in differently at any point in time and could be a new director comes in and they have a very different opinion.
What do you bet that person is best friends with the tree warden?
Cody, I love the free speech option over there. You crack me up. So I was going to say, I know we have a lot of athletes here who probably would like to know what we might do, with this item as a discussion, but I would want to get home to do some homework. So I'm happy to do a sense of the meeting to just, go forward with feasibility to see, what our options are. Happy to, for all of those, interested in supporting that.
Keep the pool open in the meantime.
Yes, obviously keep the pool open for as long as we can. It's not always, as Dr. Jones said, our option. Yes.
That's the sense of the meeting, both parts.
Good point. Okay. I was gonna say everybody that would be interested in supporting the sense of the meeting. Yeah. Do you want to raise your hand? Oh, and I see Cody. So that would be 7 seven of us that are sitting here out of seven. So we'll keep you guys all posted on where things are as we move forward. And not suggesting that everybody should just run out of the room because we have a lot of other interesting topics coming up. But for those of you who are, okay. I'll give you all a minute for anybody that needs to get home and do homework, make dinner and so forth. But I appreciate the support coming out tonight.
Chair Hirsch, was that sense of the meeting supposed to be a vote, or was it just a very?
No, it's just a
casual
sense of the meeting.
Just very, not as SOMR.
Yes, it was a unanimous sense of the meeting that we would like to.
But not a sense of the meeting resolution, just a, hey, what are your thoughts? Because those are two very different things.
Now you tell me.
An SOMR has to be voted. Hey, what do you guys are thinking? We all seem to be in agreement, doesn't have to be voted.
Well, that's why I was gonna say I was gonna check Robert's rules. Do we
I
need
think
to
the
have a
sense of the
sense-
meeting was around basically forming a feasibility committee.
Yeah,
And
that's what I'm saying. Do we need to make a sense of the meeting resolution? I'm happy to
That
reword
would
it.
formalize it as opposed to just
Okay,
noting.
I'm happy to make a sense of the meeting resolution that we would like to move forward with a feasibility study and keep the pool open. A feasibility committee and keep the pool open in the meanwhile. If you guys can support that, if you, chatty, you guys can want to support the sense of the meeting resolution.
Who was the second?
I need a second for that.
I think Ms.
Sophie?
Coben.
Yeah, Sophie raised her hand. So all in support? Cody? Yep, okay, so we're back to 7 out of 7. Hurrah. Other people that I know that are sitting here that would probably love to get home at a reasonable hour to their families are all of our educational staff. So next up on our agenda is the K-12 STEM Math and Science Report. Bring up Mr. D'Amico and our, academic support heads here. Come on.
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Jones, Madam Chair, members of the board, this packed room. We are pleased to present the K-12 STEM report. I have the pleasure of introducing the authors of that report, Mike Reed, Andrew Byrne on the math side, Tara Fogel, Sean Hoyt on the science side. I'm sure, as well as Mike read the report on the pool, he watched the video on the STEM report. So we are open for business and we'd love to answer any questions that you may have at this point. All four of them are here and ready to go.
I know who's got his hand up first. I'm going to call on Dr. McCanty Anthony, but before you do that, I didn't know if the authors of our study have anything they'd like to say first. Now, look at them. They're like, peace out now. Dr. McCanty Anthony.
Thank you for the, I'll say on behalf of the board, thank you for the report and things like that. I think it was comprehensive. I appreciate how you took where the data from fall and then brought it forward with all the updates on benchline mid-year assessment and some of the other programs and things. So that was that was nice to see. And it also really points to, in my opinion, the real strengths of the program. I mean, some of the gains, you heard it in the GEA comments, some of the gains are really, really impressive and speak to, I know the hard work you're all doing. So that's great. I had a couple of just clarifying questions, if I could. I'm sorry I didn't get these to you ahead of time. I usually give the warnings, but it's nothing bad. Mike, when you were talking about the curriculum, on that curriculum slide, on the cycle, you said that in 27-28 there was going to be a cost. Probably regardless of whether we kept going with the same curriculum or we changed it. I was wondering if you might be able to talk more about that.
Sure. So we have a 6-year curriculum cycle of which we're in year 4 right now. Next year, we start what we call our internal audit. And then the following year, if we see fit to form a committee because we want to go in a different direction than the program we currently have, then we form a committee of stakeholders. And regardless of whether we decide to stick with Big Ideas as our program or move to another one, we will have to re-up our licensing. So, you know, there's digital components to that. There's consumable workbooks that are part of that. So, even if we wanted to stick with exactly what we have, which it's going very well, regardless, we would have to, you know, update some things. Now, the cost is sort of unpredictable at this point, but I would say our textbooks that we have at the middle school level wouldn't need to be updated necessarily if we stayed with the exact same program. But the consumable work texts at our younger grades, we would have to pay for those. So either way, we would enter into another 6-year cycle typically with a vendor of our choosing.
Flex program look like? What does that look like?
Yeah, so Reflex is a computer adaptive program we use for fact fluency. And so for years, you know, one of the main gripes of our teachers in the older grades, 5th grade and beyond, it's kids don't have their fact fluency down specifically with multiplication and division. And so we identified a need to, you know, sort of mitigate that problem earlier on. And so we're actually starting as early as 1st grade. It really would start this time of year for 1st graders with addition and subtraction. But ideally, we would get our 3rd graders multiplying and dividing right from the jump of the year, because that's the most critical skill that they develop in 3rd grade, which would then, you know, we should see benefits and reap rewards later on when we get to more complex math in the upper grades.
I don't know if you wanted, other people wanted to do the math.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I remember the Mad Minutes, Mr. D'Amico. I remember that, from way back in the day. Does anybody else have a question? And yep, Ms. Behet? And then
Actually,
Sophie?
staying on the topic of math and your advanced math success slides, all middle school AP students scored a 5.
We have
On-
unbelievable students in middle school.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, we have kids from 6th grade to 8th grade going to the high school at various levels. One of our 8th graders is in the honors advanced calculus course. And he actually qualified through the AMC and the Amy into the Junior Math Olympiad. He actually came on our snow day. Bonnie O'Regan came in because that was the only day we could give it. And so she came in to make sure he could take it. He wasn't feeling well and he still did well. So we have just these impressive individuals at all levels, from honors algebra 2 up. Well, I should say at every level in middle school, but that go to the high school. And it's really just a cool thing that I think we offer, you know, these kids the opportunity to do that with, you know, our phenomenal teachers at the high school that love to do it. Next year we're on track to have probably about 12 or 13 honors algebra 2 kids again, and then 4 AP pre-calculus kids. You know, it kind of varies from year to year. It's a little unpredictable depending on what kids are doing outside of school. Sometimes they take courses online and then they come in and show that they have what it takes to jump another level. And so, you know, the wonderful thing about Dr. Jones is she's super supportive of, you know, these kids and, you know, we go to great lengths to make sure that they have a good experience and can get to the high school and can get back. And we engineer schedules around them so that, you know, they don't miss anything going back to their middle school. So yeah, we have, you know, just a really strong pipeline that's feeding to middle and ultimately to high school, where Andrew gets to see that every day, how well those kids are doing. So it's pretty exciting. And, you know, personally, I'm just super proud of the teachers, for, you know, just, you know, going all in with this program a few years back, and every year we just keep getting better and better. And this year we're kind of on track for the same thing. And I'm excited to share those results in the fall, hoping that things go to plan.
Ms. Coven?
I have a question just with the math achievement data, the 4-year trend, the 3 to 5 and the other one. It looks like for some, you know, I try to track like cohorts, like year over year, as opposed to looking at the 4 years in a row, you know, thinking like, how are these kids progressing? But regardless, everyone seems to go down in 5th grade. Can you speak to why that would be? And similarly, I feel like everyone seems to go down in 8th grade. So I don't know if there's what's behind that pattern, if you could explain. What your
Yeah,
thoughts-
so, you know, it's sort of a hard thing to nail down exactly. We do think fact fluency is one of those components, but the math just gets more complex. Our counterpart, Kim Palladino, who works on the English language arts side, she tends to see the trends go up into 8th grade as the kids develop their reading skills. The texts get more complex, but the skills stay the same. Whereas math, it becomes very discrete in the certain skills that they need to work on. And, I think, there's a strong reading component that we see on the SBA as well. And so that becomes more complicated. So that's what we're doing with the Building Thinking Classrooms, really, is we're trying to build some grit so that when you come across something that's kind of jamming you up or making you feel uncomfortable, you have that grit to sort of say, all right, I have to attack this problem another way. And so I think there's a strong reading component to some of it. I think there's a grittiness component to some of it. There's definitely a fact fluency component to some of it. And then, in the past few years, we've had some staffing challenges at the middle school level, just legit reasons, maternity leaves and medical leaves. And, I don't want to say that, a math teacher is more important than any other teacher in the district. But what I do know to be true is it is very hard to put somebody into a spot halfway through the school year and find somebody that's excellent to meet our standards. And so sometimes we do the best that we can to put somebody in that's going to do well. But it's not the same as, our staff that we have, fully hired. So I think, that's sort of what's led to some things the past few years. And even this year, we have some people out again. And so, those struggles are sort of hard to manage, but I think it's the complexity of the math, which is why it tends to dip. And I'm trying to flatten that out so that when they get to the high school where you notice it rises again, maybe they can rise even further, because, I really do view it as, one spoke or 3 spokes in a 13-spoke wheel, right? It's my job to flatten that out so that they can get through algebra, so that they can unlock the rest of the courses at the high school. And so, that's the best way I can put it. I wish there was a silver bullet, because if there was, we would utilize it. But you can see our pipelines getting stronger, as you can see in 4th and 5th grade. Those scores are trending to be higher, which should feed into the middle school. And our algebra 1 through 8th grade actually is going to hopefully increase this year as well, which, that's one of our goals, 75%, which we kind of float around 60% there, and kind of working on getting kids into a 1 level advanced when they get into middle school. So, we have to meet kids where they are and personalize the instruction based on the skills that they need. And we're working hard at the elementary level to do that.
I am shockingly, don't have questions. I know Mark's stunned. I really just wanted to say I was really impressed, and more than anything else, proud when reading this, majority of this report. Like, I have watched you all build the programs that we are seeing the results from now, seeing the growth of our students, seeing that now, we talked about algebra for 8th graders, and, we're seeing the growth there. We're seeing the growth in science, as we've been pressing for more rigor in science and in depth in the middle school courses. We're seeing incredible success with our middle school students, as you were talking about, in, rising in higher levels of math. We're seeing incredible success with our science students in middle school who are, winning awards. We just got some emails from Mr. Bramante on that. Our high schoolers are also winning those types of awards. It's really very encouraging, I think, for members of the board, especially some of us who've been here for long enough that, and advocating for so many of these changes for so long, to really see the fruits of those labor, be viable on the tree. And so I just don't have questions. I mean, I may have 1 or 2 that I can shoot off later, but I just wanted to congratulate you all, because your hard work and dedication, and the hard work and the dedication of our educators in our classrooms every day, is what has supported this growth and supporting our students in their academic journeys. And I just wanted to say how much we really, really appreciate that focus and that effort from all of you. And of course, had a little panic attack when I was reading this report because I saw all of the other textbooks and things that might need to be revised. And I have a feeling I'm going to end up on a couple more textbooks committees. But I'm happy to do so, especially seeing, for instance, Big Ideas Math and how well that supported our students. So, you know, if that time is spent well and supports our students as well as it has, and we're seeing that growth here, I just want to say, you know, congratulations. And the same to all of our educators who may be listening. So. Mike.
I just want to talk about science for a minute. Tara, agree, 100%. But Tara, the Inner Orbit program. So the SAW against in science and social studies, the challenge is, you know, around the country is like these are the non-tested subjects. You've got the state test in literacy, you've got the state test in math. Science is untested. I'm hearing the report about, except for 2 grades, I know. But I'm reading the Inner Orbit as a way of like nailing down some of that content in some of those other areas. I don't know if that's your thinking things, but really trying to make concrete, you know, 3 to 8 exactly, you know, the science content that we're learning on each level. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and right now we're implementing it in 6, 7, and 8 to really get a pulse check because we know what our 5th graders leave with because we have the 5th grade NGSS. The reporting on our NGSS is not necessarily detailed to the performance expectation. The standards drill down a little bit less specifically than the ELA and math reports. So we need a mechanism to continue to monitor progress through 6th, 7th, and 8th to better understand where they're going to be. And we need these predictive indicators in 8th grade. So Sean and I together at an NSTA conference a few years ago met with Inner Orbit. We tried it out. We talked to a few teachers and districts using it, and we decided this is something that we want to invest time into. So we had them tailor these year-long assessments to our curriculum and match our performance expectations. What we love about it is it reports out on all 3 dimensions of science teaching and learning. That's going to be the cross-cutting concepts, the science and engineering practices, and the DCIs, and we get assessed on all of those in the final test in 8th and 11th grade. So we're finding it to be a successful predictive indicator. It's our first year. Our teachers are using it well, and our students don't seem to feel as though it's any extra stressor within their day because it's just 3 times a year in 6th and 7th and twice a year in 8th. Since they have the test at the end of the year, we don't double dip there.
How do they get the results?
Oh, it's immediate. So it's going to be immediate feedback for teachers. Sean and I obviously can evaluate that on a district level. Teachers have access to their student scores. And then in our monthly program meetings, we look at grade level assessment data and full school assessment data.
Families?
Parents have access in the parent portal. Once it's uploaded, we haven't done that this year yet. It doesn't automatically connect to the Linkit portal to have that communicated. But again, it's year 1. We need to figure out what that looks like.
Did you have another follow-up? No, okay. Anyone else? Kathleen, sorry.
I know, I feel like I have to ask something. But I don't have anything smart to ask, but maybe it's actually to Mr. Hoyt and Mr. Byrne. Maybe if we could turn to the high school for a second. I actually feel like it might dovetail with where we're going on our next conversation, which is really just a framework, but you know, we are starting to think about kids moving into higher and higher levels, right? And perhaps that's going to be impacted with students making their own choices. But I don't know, what would you, I guess, I'm just going to try to think of a question. And each one of you can tell me what maybe your biggest challenges are, because there's so many, I'm only hearing the positives. There has to be a challenge. You know, for you, is it as you get to the next highest level in math and computer science, those classes are still running online, right? But do you feel like perhaps as you have, it seems like a bigger and bigger cohort, do you have a trajectory of those classes coming live in the next like 3-4 years? Are you thinking about things like that?
Yeah, I'll just speak from the math and computer science point of view. As you all know, as many of you know, I came to you a couple of years ago with the proposal for the honors linear algebra class. And so we do have it on the books that I would hope that we would have enough students someday soon to run that class live and in person at Greenwich High School. Unfortunately, the numbers haven't just panned out just yet, but certainly with the pipeline that Mr. Reed is speaking about, that should be coming. And I'm glad that we have it ready and built out for that day. From a computer science point of view, again, our kids are doing amazing things, as you saw in the report, and we are getting more and more interest about computer science from our 8th to 9th graders. And as a result, we are able to expand that program as well. And we do also have on the books there some honors advanced computer science courses, which have had to run through an independent study model, but are also ready and primed should we have enough students to actually run the class.
Anyone asking for anything around AI yet?
Well, just interestingly enough, as you saw in the report, AP is constantly changing things on us. They did release in the last couple of weeks a new AP curriculum in cyber technology, cybersecurity, and cyber networking. So that may be something that I may be bringing to the board in the years to come as an opportunity for our students to even get a broader view of computer science and its impact on our society and our world around us. So I hope to bring that to you guys in the next couple of years, I would think.
Say, oh, good, another textbook committee to be on.
Can we ask Mr. Hoyt? How about, okay, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Physics C
Yes.
has expanded in a major way. Is that right? I mean, how are we seeing that rolling out?
Yeah, so this year it expanded a little bit more. Traditionally, we typically have 1 to 2 sections, and then this year we had 3 sections. So that was very exciting. But one of the great things is a lot of our upper level courses, our honors courses, AP courses, we're seeing more and more students take them. Just for example, our AP chemistry class, it went from about 60 kids to 110 in 1 year. And that again is, kids are taking it, being challenged, and they're becoming more prepared to take these higher level courses, and it's exciting. And we offer them the opportunities to come in and take placement tests to be able to jump into those classes. And what we find is that students are being really successful in the classes. So, we continue to do that, and I meet with students regularly. We offer quite an array of science courses, and especially at the AP level. So our goal is to make sure that we are providing students with all the supports necessary to get them into higher level courses, and that we're able to support them in there. So if they want to go and take those AP courses and take more AP Physics C and things like that, we're able to really, provide multiple opportunities for students.
Cody, I heard linear algebra, and I bet you have a question over there.
No, I always have trouble figuring out what questions to ask on these things, because I don't know if any of my questions ever have any impact. They usually don't. One, just from a management standpoint, I'm always interested when people set goals, like what the actual practical impact of missing the goal is. Like if your actuals were at the goal level across the board this year, as opposed to missing them, is there any operational thing that would be different right now than what you're otherwise doing?
Well, I think when we hit our goals, we have to realign and set new goals. I think it was a bit of a surprise that we're able to reach some of those all-time highs. But in a way, I think it's also a positive and a testament to the work that's being done internally. But you ask a good question. When you hit a goal and you exceed a goal, did you set the right goal to begin with? I think as we learn more about the patterns and trends within each of those areas, we get better at setting goals. I think, when we talk about the strategic plan and we set metrics in the beginning, it was a little bit of a wondering about where the numbers should be. Now that we've lived through it for a couple of years, I think we're aligning better with where the progress should go in the next 2 or 3 years. So I'm not sure, Cody, if that necessarily helps at all. We're happy,
just what I'm saying is, like, we did not hit any of we didn't hit any of the like mastery of mathematics goals, right? And if we had, is there anything different that's happening? Because, let me give you an example. Like in a business, Like, let's say there was a budget or something, and I asked the CEO, hey, like, we missed the budget, but if we had hit it, what would be different? And they might say, well, if we had hit it, I probably wouldn't have fired this person who was in charge of something that, missed, right? Like you could identify like, you have a goal, the goal is guiding towards operational things. And if you miss it, like we take some action. And I'm wondering if there's any actions that if there's anything we can point to that we say, we're doing this thing differently for having missed it than we would if we were there. And the answer might be, you know what, the goals are really more just a thing to aspire to, and it doesn't actually change the way that we operate. But I'm wondering where on the spec, like if is it that, or is it, no, like there are things that would be different today if we were hitting these goal numbers, besides just we'd set new goals or whatever.
And I think it's the former rather than the latter on that.
Which is an interesting question for the board, because what is the point of setting these if they don't have any operational impact? It's just something to ponder.
I might just add, though, I think you guys have mentioned feedback. That is an outgrowth of Junior Innovators and 0 Hour. I mean, those are new programs for us. Like, are we in our 3rd year of 0 Hour and 3rd year of Junior Innovators as well? Those are an outgrowth because we knew we needed to stretch more, and we were not hitting the targets that we needed, especially for a certain population of students. So I think we do that work every single year, and that's why we bring new innovative things to the board, so that we can continue to get better at what we do.
That's a cool example. Thank you. Appreciate that. Those are the things that are interesting of like, this is off, here's something we're doing about it. It's a good way to think about the management of this.
I was also going to say, and I'm sure Mike is probably jumping in to say the same thing, that's why, we were kind of floating without a revised strategic plan for a while. We worked really hard. Dr. Jones worked really hard as well with, all of our staff and academics, whatever, to set those goals and really push for rigor and things like, additional rigor and things like that. And, we talked about making sure that our board reports and things like that were tied to those strategic goals. So we're getting the data and ensuring that those goals that we set were the right ones, right? And so I think Dr. Jones is correct. Mr. D'Amico is correct as well, that once you hit them, you realize you've made it, either they were too easy to hit or they were the right target and you move forward. And again, I think because we have that such a strong, focused strategic plan, because we're getting data now, because we have this incredible curriculum team that is going through our entire curriculum and reviewing and renewing and seeing where the holes are and how to support our students of every level. We're seeing ourselves hit those goals more and more frequently. We're seeing growth in a way we haven't seen in a while. And, I can't speak for other members of the strategic plan committee, but I'm sure we'll be sitting down to have a discussion of where to go next with that too. Mike?
I mean, Cody, you bring up a good point. So in science, we're meeting all the goals, and in math, we're meeting the goals in elementary, which makes sense, with the SBA goals, because that's where you're going to start. And as the progress moves forward through the grades, you're going to see more and more growth. But I was going to bring up a similar point, because I'm wondering, and I don't know if this is a question for you, Mark, or more for us, because one thought I had while watching the video, and for the record, I was number 8, you're now up to number 20, so the numbers have skyrocketed.
We're trending in the right direction.
Congratulations. But one of the things that kept coming to my mind is almost like, so why do we have this? So we have this STEM report in the spring. That's on our agenda and things like that. We don't have, where I'm going with it. We don't have a literacy report. If you look at our numbers in October, there were a lot more flat indicators there, particularly in middle school, on the literacy side than there were on the STEM side. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if that's us. I think that's part on our end, and I don't know what we can do now and things like that as far as it makes sense. But it kept wondering why. Well, why do we do this in the spring, and why are we doing a similar literacy report? I'm sure they're wondering why their colleagues get off the hook. But because especially when it comes to, and to repeat this, is the science benchmarks and things like that, which were so interesting. And I continue to wonder about if we have those same benchmarks in literacy all the way through, and if we're making that growth. And I think the importance of having that kind of return to our literacy focus, particularly since those indicators are not showing the progress that we're seeing on the STEM side. I feel like that's a failing on us as a board that we don't have that report.
If I could comment, one of the things I would suggest the board consider, one of the things that we highlight are the standardized assessment results. And we know that kids take those tests late spring, and then we analyze them internally over the summer, and then we present the achievement report in the fall. One of the things that we could do is we could present a mid-year report using our internal benchmarking data, which is predictive of how we expect the students to perform on our standardized assessments. So it might be helpful for the board to consider looking at different types of assessment data as a mid-year check-in. And then, in my opinion, it would be great if we would be able to present in July the results from that school year, but it's just not the way things shake out. We have to wait until the assessments are released from embargoed data form, et cetera. But if there's the sense of the board that you'd like to know, academically how we're doing across the board, we do have our internal metrics that we could walk the board through. Again, different data set, different purpose for why we collect that data, but it's still relevant enough for us to have a conversation around, because it is indicative of how we expect performance to be on our standardized assessments.
Well, I was going to say the one thing I know that I was going to comment, but I wasn't going to do it here, but that we used to get a lot, some of the reports used to be a lot more in depth with some of the data. And I know that's one of the few things that I would love to be able to dig into a little bit more, because we got, sort of the high level look here, and would give us an opportunity to really get, in there and dig in and support, and especially, literacy supports, so many of the programs with, you need high literacy to do science and math with all the, word problems and beyond.
Well, and the other thing the board might want to consider, analyzing assessment data is just one component, but the other thing that you might want us to talk about are curriculum updates. So for example, if we're launching a new curriculum, it might be helpful for us to come back mid-year and let you know what professional learning has taken place, get teacher feedback on that professional learning, talk about the progress we're making in relation to the pacing guides that we set to make sure that we're in alignment with our state standards so that kids will be ready for the standardized assessments. But, there's more than just assessments that we could talk about as an instructional team and advise the board of. So something to consider.
I love a guy who adds more work to his plate.
Well, it's really all
Yeah,
for them.
they're not
I'm sure they're all
happy, but-
smiling.
You are. I can't speak for them. Dr. Jones, I know you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, and it kind of feeds into what Mike was just asking about. The one group that's not represented here tonight is pre-K. And that is absolutely tied directly to our literacy success. And we are just now in our third year of all of our pre-K new curriculum, which came before the board, and we are seeing wonderful results. So I think that was a big hole for us with our youngest learners. And it kind of goes to what Cody asked as well, in that it was the data. When we were looking at the data and, okay, they've been with us in pre-K, but then when we looked at them in kindergarten, why were we not seeing more growth? And we knew we needed to actually make a change. But I think that ties really closely to literacy. And we need to be sure that when we're presenting, especially in literacy, we're looking all the way back to our earliest, youngest learners.
So you have two different types of assessments we could look at. You have probably a progress monitoring, I would call it, of the implementation of new curriculum. And then you could also have us talk to you about the robust professional learning calendar that we architect over the summer and then implement throughout the course of the year to provide teachers with meaningful professional learning that ties all of this together. So, I mean, there's certainly other things that we could be coming before you and speaking on behalf of. So
We usually have a lovely curriculum, retreat. So I think that looks like this might be a good discussion topic.
Yeah.
For that. Thank you for bringing that up as well, Mike. Does anybody else have any questions? Anyone? Comments, discussions? No? Well, then we'll let you guys head home, and wanted to just again, thank you so much for the incredible work and the fact that, we're really seeing the payoff now. And I'm going to put in a little plug again for parents who are seeing the results in their own homes to come and speak at the BET budget, a public meeting next week to support our budget, because without the budget that we've had so far, we wouldn't have been able to do all this amazing work and see these results. And we hope to grow even further.
Well, on behalf of the entire team, thank you for your support. And I'd like to thank all the teachers who are listening out there, because without all of their tremendous efforts, these numbers wouldn't be as great as they are. So thank you to all our teachers who are listening in tonight, and thank you.
Which leads us into our next agenda item. I feel like this was done so well. Okay. Circular to the GHS curriculum discussion. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Ms. Stowe.
Thank you so much. So you might all remember at the end of our last meeting last month, we were hearing from a lot of parents at the time about the new rollout of the course enrollment. And then I continued to hear a lot from other members of the community, not necessarily positive or negative, just can you tell us a little bit more about it? And then that sort of prompted, well, why don't we kind of have a more philosophical conversation about, what drove that, how it's impacting guidance, how that leads to other, sort of broader philosophical questions at the high school. And just to be clear, this is meant to just be a framework of a conversation. I'm not, when we actually pursue some of these things, we're going to have to gather data. We're going to have to involve, teachers, administrators, parents, or who we've been hearing from a lot of students and us. But I think that this was just, and I've received input from many of you. So this was just the beginning of a list. And like I said, it's a framework. So we could just go through it. I think it'll probably be something we'll probably bring to a retreat where we're going to have more data on many of these items, and then include whoever's relevant. But I just sort of start with, and I think Dr. Jones, you probably could address the course enrollment, because like I said, I think it's happening right now. There seems to be, I'm sure, generally good things, but I'd like to understand, what do you see as the upside, the downside, and kind of where this process came from, really.
I think on the course enrollment, what you're asking about is the automation aspect and how it is different. I think it's been a long time coming for us. We were doing a lot of things by hand that could be automated, which, and I'm just going to look, I see Ms. Ainello back there. How can we make more efficient and better time even for our counselors, instead of having to hand put everything in? But not only that, this is our first year, so we're like on entry level baby steps. But once you actually get really good at utilizing the software, even the build that you can do within the schedule is just so much more effective than somebody trying to do it themselves and by hand. It's just, that's the capacity of technology, and it's only going to continue to get better. An example would be, we were talking about, somebody had asked me a question on the board about, okay, what would you do if you had to use another pool? How would you go in and schedule swimmers differently and automate that, where maybe they're at an offsite pool if they had to be, and so that all of their opens are either following in the morning or following in the afternoon, but when you automate, it helps any of those kind of issues be so much more effective. And again, we're late to the party. Most districts are already automated. And I think it's exciting for us. I think we're going to gain a lot of time back that can be used to do other things.
Clarify what you mean by automate.
So inside the actual platform, inside the system, a lot of districts do it through PowerSchool. Aspen's unusual. There's not a whole lot of people that use Aspen. Yes. Yeah. Well, yes. No, it's not your learning management system. It's actually Aspen. So it's not like Schoology or your Google Classroom. It's separate from that. And inside Aspen, you go in and you have to put all your criteria inside the software. So let's say you do have a prerequisite. You don't want somebody to enroll in pre-calc before they enroll. Let's say they need to be in Algebra 2. You don't want them to be able to go and just enroll in pre-calc. So you have to go and build all of those kind of components into the system so that that when you get ready, they're seeing what is available to them is what they should be seeing. And on the platform that the high schools rolled out, they can also see their teacher course recommendations are in there for the students. But it takes a while. I mean, it'll take us probably 2 or 3 years to really get good at it because it takes a lot of time. And there's been a consultant helping this year, which has been great, but you've got to get all that criteria inside the system. Are you automated at your high school?
Since 2002.
Yep, that's that. Well, I was too when I was a principal in about 2002, 2004 when we first automated, and it really changed my role too as a principal. I gained so much more time, and I think that's what we're going to see. I think we'll be able to use that time just even more effectively to analyze data and have just more time to do the things we want to do.
Why has it taken us so long to have that? Like
That is-
2002 was a long time ago. It just,
Yeah, I
it's-
mean, that's a really great question, and
I'm
you
not
know,
asking that in like a accusatory way. It's more like curious of.
I think it's a great question. And I also think you don't know what you don't know if you haven't seen it. And I think that that's part of it. We are very fortunate at Greenwich High School to have a lot of people who have spent the bulk of their career at Greenwich High School. So you know what you know. And if you haven't been somewhere where you've seen it automated and see how it kind of changes the entire process, how it can make everything more effective, you're going to be slower, to come to the table and make a change. Change is hard. And so there's a whole variety of reasons.
Staying on the topic. So I think what we're hearing from some members of the community that they're worried about is that, are teacher recommendations still considered? Are things just going forward without, what is that? That would be a significant change. So
Yeah, that's moving to the B that you have on here, I think. Yeah. They could still see what their teacher course recommendations are. They show up in the system, and Michelle helped walk me through what a student view would look like. And they can see that, but also if they're making a family decision, there are parents who would say, I want my child to be challenged, and I'm okay with them making a B-, or even maybe a C, and really be challenged. And I want them to go in this course because they already know mom's a nurse, grandma's a nurse. This is what they really want to do. So you're going to have to challenge yourself, because if that's really what you want to do, you're going to be taking challenging courses all the way through to reach your goals. So I think what we've done is we're trying to give more voice and choice to the families and the students, but the recommendation is absolutely in the system.
I mean, that leads me to the next subject here, just as an aside. I know, we look every year at the course enrollment at the high schools to make adjustments and, in sections and the other things, of course, rigor and whatnot. And I know this is our first time with the new self-enrollment, I would say, for students enrollment, as opposed to working directly with the guidance counselors. And so I'd love to sort of, at some point, just hear how the guidance counselors are sort of feeling like that, if it's opened up more time for them to work with students in other ways. And I guess that brings us to, the role of our guidance counselors and, their perspective on the modification of course enrollment impact that process has had. And that brings us also to college guidance, which you can see a little bit of if in the prior report where there was discussion on the PSAT being, offered, and more students taking that. Testing is definitely going to be coming back, I think, for college applications. And the sooner we work with our students at the high school, the better on the college prep process. So I'm just curious it may not be for tonight, but, would love to have a discussion on that, on the role of our guidance counselors and, college guidance timing, the apps that they're using, the professional development they're having. I know Michelle's here, but it makes it very difficult, if they're working with, only Greenwich High School students. So they may not know the trends around the country or be able to switch gears immediately if students aren't getting into certain places. And obviously our goal through the 4-year, through all 13 years of our schooling in Greenwich High School, pre-K to high school, especially from all through the high school, is to make sure that our students are college ready and making those goals, if that should be what they want to do. Many students don't want to go to college. They have other avenues, but for those that do, I want to make sure that we're taking those 13 years and making sure we're not, getting to the end goal there. So it may not be for discussion for tonight, but I'd love to.
This whole, I mean, we can also look at this whole guidance section and get that on the agenda plan in the fall as well, just for after we've lived through this.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, I just, to talk about the guidance piece, what I hope is what Tony, what you were referencing of like that they would have more time because they have this automated system. So it frees up collecting forms and whatever, all these antiquated systems that we have. I love the idea of the efficiency of it. And I really hope that it opens up time, because one of the things that I like about American education, as opposed to like sort of the more European model where you get on a track in 6th grade and you're stuck on the track, is that we recognize that some kids may really come into their own, say their junior or senior year of high school, and suddenly be ready for an academic challenge that they were totally unprepared for as a freshman. So, one hope that I have, and I know of examples of this because I've now had 3 kids go through the high school, so it's like I hope the guidance counselors are sometimes checking in and saying, okay, suddenly you have this tremendous industry interest in history, right? Like now maybe suddenly you are a kid who could take an AP course, whereas in 9th grade, you didn't seem to be that student, but you've engaged. Maybe you were inspired by one of your teachers and you're a much more ambitious student than you were before. So, I mean, I think it's just part of a larger conversation about the role of guidance counselors, but I love if they are freed of sort of this secretarial work and could engage more with the students of thinking about how they can be challenged and supported.
I was gonna say just on one thing going back, of course, I'm getting like texts from people, is that I think one of the concerns, sorry to go back on the course enrollment, is that the one downside I think there's that our group of parents are worried about is that you're maybe going to reduce the rigor in certain classes if students are pushed in that perhaps aren't ready for it. Now, the answer to that is if they're fine getting a C, fine. But that parents are concerned, I think, that the classes themselves might be slowed down. And that would then, obviously impact APs. And so you have to look at sort of that whole trajectory, right?
I absolutely do not believe that's going to happen. I don't think our teachers are going to just slow down their curriculum. I think they're going to, especially if you're an AP teacher, those results are so important to them and they really care about how their kids do. There is no way that they're going to say, let's just get off the pace so that we can slow the class down. They're more likely to have a conversation with parent or student or counselor to say, look, we applaud you for being in this class, but maybe this is too much right now because grandma's in the hospital and this is happening and this is happening, and they'll end up going down a level. And that happens anyway for all kids. But I think giving kids an opportunity and the students an opportunity to excel at the highest level that they can is just so very important. And it's what we've heard this board say. I mean, it's in our special education action plan. It's, this is what we've been saying. We want kids in Algebra 1. Well, guess what? It doesn't stop when they go to high school.
I couldn't agree more. I'm just responding to queries that I get. And I think I'd actually question the other way. Like, do we ever feel like, we're gatekeepers at times for students excelling? And maybe that's the other way. Maybe to Sophie's point earlier that a child, all of a sudden it connects and they should go to the next level, but perhaps their grade didn't suggest that they should.
I think that, yes, and I think it's not uncommon for any high school to be challenged with that when you talk about gatekeeping. And that's what Sophie was talking about, where you get on a track and it's really difficult to get out of that. I mean, and sometimes, quite frankly, it starts in middle school Because if you don't have, advanced math in middle school, then it's 1 year after the next. The great thing again that, to the math team's credit, we're doing, like, I saw the bridge to pre-AP calculus will happen this summer. We have all these advanced courses that kids can take over the summer to be able to get on a different pathway. And we need to continue to get better at that in all subject areas.
Well, I was going to say, I know Kathleen introduced this as this was a framework for a discussion, and it's certainly not all up for discussion this evening. I think that these are just things we wanted to sort of put forward. One of our roles as the board is to sort of ask some of these questions and bring up some of these topics, often which don't fit into any of the other reports we get or discussions that we have. And I know for me, some of these topics and things came out of discussions that we've had at the XCOM with our high schoolers and talking about ways to help reduce some of the stress that they feel. They've been given an opportunity to, share some of their thoughts, and some of these topics came from that, from parents, from discussions with PTAC, and all of those parents who are, involved, as well as, some alumni who've reached out. And so I think these are just things that were on our minds because of questions that have been asked. Certainly not something that we're looking to make changes on without any discussion or input from staff, administration, and other stakeholders. But these are just things that, have been asked of us, so. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to that?
Hey,
No?
just
Cody? Yep.
something like honors and AP class weighting, because I know some of these have broader implications, and then where you probably have more constituents you want to weigh in on, and then some of them just seem like straight up judgment calls. That one seems like a more, it seems like on one end of the spectrum where it should be, it's kind of like you just have a system and you have the ground rules. I don't know, is this the right forum to like talk through, like, is one way to deal with a list like this to just pick a few of the, hey, we have a lot of the information, or with some amount of information added, we could probably make a decision relatively quickly, whereas others of these are like longer term things that probably won't be resolved, at least while I'm on the board. Like, is there a triage component of this, of what can be easily addressed with not a lot of information, collected and provided, and what is harder and should be put off? Is it worth kind of dividing it like that? Just an idea for everybody.
I think we need to have a discussion again with a lot of the stakeholders. We haven't spoken to our educators and our administrators to even see what problems they feel exist, what problems we may have heard, hear about from parents and students and whatever to even make that address. But I think this was Kathleen's purpose of kind of opening up this discussion to have, which is what you were just saying, Cody.
Yeah, but we can certainly move at, the same zest that we move on capital projects, for example. So I think that this is nice for the Board of Education to be talking about education. And so I think that Cody, I think you're right. I think we should just keep moving along. We'll probably have more topics that come out of this, and then, let's add it to our next meeting. And then after that, and perhaps there are decisions that we can make in the short term or frame, data that you'll need to look at over the long term to see if the decisions were in fact correct, right?
And is the point of this particular conversation, like, now's the request to the public of, because when we say like we want to get constituent feedback and all that stuff, like, are we going to say the same thing next meeting, or next meeting we're like, all right, we got the feedback, and if you didn't get the feedback in, then snooze you lose kind of thing. I'm not sure if I get process wise where we are with that question.
I think move as quickly as possible, but I think we need public feedback. I think we need teachers. I think we need administrators. But, I imagine a lot of people have already, these aren't new ideas, right? So I imagine there's a lot of data out there and, thoughts that we could get pretty quickly from.
Well, I was going to say
right?
more than anything else, and I don't, not that I don't love public input, because I do, and I do try to respond and read every email that comes in, but I think we need to be very clear of what our ask is. This would, as Kathleen mentioned, this is really just a framework of things and comments and questions that have been asked of us, and I think we need to be clear of what our ask will be before we start asking for input from anyone, because we could get emails on 1,001 topics. So maybe that is a further discussion that, or the board can send, I don't know if Kathleen wants to, or just, to me, and or we do a Google Doc of some of our questions and comments, and we can sort of form that into what is our ask?
Can I ask one more thing?
Of course.
Just I'm using honors and APs weighting, just because I get that one, where some of these others are more like abstract topics. If we were to change that, is that something that's like a policy committee thing, or is that a resolution the board passes, or is that like a sense of the meeting that gives guidance to, the head of to Ralph or whoever the head of the high school is, and they make the change? Like, what's the actual, I'm just curious, using that as an example. And obviously there's, because the broader point is every one of these has a certain feasible timeline at which you can get info to make a change, and then it has a practical way the change is made. Like, what would be the practical way to make that change?
First, we have to just figure out if we need to make a change.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
need
no,
to
no,
make a
true.
change. I'm just saying, we very well may decide we should. We heard from, Lil earlier. She sent out a survey to staff. We would love to see her, share those results or other results with us on that. But the staff felt that they didn't necessarily need it. So you have one area of input. We still haven't, we haven't spoken to administration, haven't heard feedback from others. And so I think we need to decide if there is an issue that we want to address and then how we would address it. That's just my 10 cents, but.
I actually don't even know why did the
Sorry.
staff matters for like how 8 grades are weighted. It doesn't affect what's in the classroom. It's just how the scoring system.
Well, but anyway, so I can't speak to that. Sophie?
I'm gonna jump down to one of them that maybe we could talk about, like a practical step forward, which is the grading consistency across courses, like the same course but different teachers. And to me, with that's just a question of getting a report really, from the high school of what is the policy and what do they do? What do they do in science? What do they do in math? What are they doing in English and in history? Because I don't actually know. And I would be interested to know, and that may rise to a policy question at some point. And certainly I would want to hear from the teachers and administrators on that question. But I think that's something that we should have an understanding of. And it kind of relates to the questions of honors and AP and all of that, because it's just making the educational choices that our students are making them transparent, right? Like, what does it mean to be in regular honors AP? What does it mean to have this teacher versus another teacher if you're in AP physics? That kind of clarification. So I think that would be a report to us, and I would be interested in it. I don't know if other board members would be interested in it, but that's something I feel like I would like to understand as a board member.
So I think maybe the best suggestion of next step, are we,
We scared them away.
we freaking you guys out. Look, Mark's sneaking out. So I think the next step before, I don't want this to get completely, out of hand and overwhelm, our administration and academic heads and so forth and some of these things. And I think it would be best for us to, either Kathleen and I am happy to help you, or Sophie, whoever, Mike, whomever wants to step forward to work with Kathleen, not to volunteer Kathleen or Jen, to take some of these topics and form them into what questions we might, or what our asks are. And the, board can certainly weigh in. Oh, look, Jen stepped forward.
Jen just volunteered for guidance.
Hurrah.
I think it's the
Perfect.
background, isn't it?
Yes. Exactly. Then perfect. And so I think we can share that amongst the board members for input on, other questions or subjects. And then we can sort of narrow down what our appropriate asks might be. What's in our purview, what information we, can and should ask about. Yeah, Kathleen.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I'm happy to move on that. To Cody's point quickly. I mean, just for a second, I mean, you can almost figure out for the course weighting, you have to look at comparables, right? I mean, that's like the obvious thing. We can't learn from ourselves. Like, we know what we've been doing for, the past 50 years. It's kind of like the pool. Okay, we have to look at what other people are doing. So if we could think about that, and then, and perhaps even get a college perspective. I mean, I have one data set, but, my understanding is that they look at your courses. Some schools, they unweight them. They do look at the rigor differently. And so they weight some of those courses differently. So it seems that a lot of universities have figured it out. So perhaps we should, and I'm not saying we should change it as a result, because perhaps they've figured out how to do it, right? So that's, but what is Westport doing? What is New Canaan doing? What, that data must take about 10 seconds to get, right? So
I mean, we could talk about this all night, and actually, this is something that actually I get fascinated and interested with, because, how can we better support our students, our staff, our teachers, everything? But I think the best next step is, I'm going to hand it to you ladies to put into some asks and then see where we can go with that. But then I'll let Dr. Jones say something, then we can move on to monthly financials.
I do just want to answer Cody's question. So you do have your policy 6146, which is where you're grade weighting. So it is a board decision. It would go to the policy committee, obviously to the full board, but that's a big one. And I do just, to Sophie, to your comment about consistency, I also remind us that teaching is really a human endeavor. I have never, ever seen every teacher grade exactly the same, unless you're just going to do a bunch of old timey, multiple choice. You might be able to get the same assessments.
Yes, Sophie, part of the way to be a good student is to know which teachers to pick to get the easiest grades.
They don't get to pick their teachers, just saying. They may pick
Oh yeah, I
their
was
courses,
thinking,
but
I was reflecting on college days more.
oh yeah, well, that's different. But so I think that, again, we could talk all night about this, but we do have other things coming up. And I know that there's probably a lot of people logged on waiting to hear about the last two subjects on our plate, which are our action items, which we have two other items before we get to those. So moving on, I'd like to move to the monthly financial report. Take it away, Ben Branyan, and
I'm going to
Dr.
hand it
Lau.
off to Patrick. Patrick, it's all yours.
Okay, right. Thank you, Ben. So the February budget status report are prepared as we submitted onto the board. And then we have done a year-end forecast on the operating budget and the school lunch fund at the beginning of March. At this moment, we expect the fiscal year-end operating budget balance will be in line with prior year balance. The key variables area that we are paying attention is on the special education, about the out-of-district tuitions, and also the transportations areas. And then on the school lunch fund, we expect it will finish the year within the budget with minimal balance. At this moment, we foresee we do not need interim budget requests on both operating and the school lunch fund budgets. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions? Other than me? No? Anyone? No? Okay. I just have one quick one, and this might be something we don't have an answer to, because we were talking about, you noted in here that the state continues not to be able to, is continuing to not fully fund the excess cost. And, we know we're, received less this year, special ed. I know that additional funds were approved, and I just didn't know if any information has come from the state as to what additional funding we might receive. I know it would just be an estimate, but I don't know if we've gotten any data on that yet, or when those funds might be released.
Ben, you go ahead.
Yeah, nothing official has come through the state yet. We've heard a number, I believe, and Tony, correct me if you have the better number. It may be 600,000 or 400,000. There's just so many numbers thrown out lately.
Yeah,
But
that's
nothing
correct.
official.
We don't have the official number from the state.
And we don't know when they haven't said, we're working on this and we might be, letting you know by X and releasing funds by Y.
Yeah, we just know that they're working on it. I probably know more information from our delegation in Hartford, who stay in contact with us on all of this stuff.
Okay, I figured I'd just ask that question. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, then moving on, you two are still up for this one, budget transfers.
Yep, the budget transfer. So the February budget transfer has with the bigger amounts that in the report. But I mean, they are just within the normal course of business. By looking into March, I think we expect more budget transfer in the month of March because the school principals, they are reviewing and arranging their per pupil allocation budget balance to the spending area that they need for the students. So it is kind of like expecting more budget transfer items will be appear in the report in March.
Anybody have questions? Budget transfers going once, going twice? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate
right.
it. And
Thank you,
now
Karen.
to the other fun topics that everybody's waiting to hear us discuss and decide are moving on to action items. First is the 2024-25 graduation date. And I will make a motion to set the graduation date for the 2024-2025 school year as Tuesday's June 17th. Do I have a second? Ms. Costin? Okay, we can now have a discussion on this. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to? Nope. Anyone? Going once?
I mean, I think.
Going twice?
I mean, what was the decision? It's it's as early as it can be, right? So-
Yes, this is exactly the 180th day.
So before I take a vote, I would just like to mention one thing, and I think Tony can probably say it better, but I know that we've had these discussions in the past. Why can't you do it on the Monday? It is that the entire field needs to be set up with chairs and all of the stages and everything else. They don't like to do that and leave it over a weekend. And because the students the day before graduation do have a practice run. So they need to have that opportunity to do that and some other things to get our seniors ready to fly out of the nest. So that's just for anybody wondering why we didn't look at Monday. And I'll let Dr. Jones address.
Just
it.
add one more from the legislation is that right now, because we do it in March, which is really helpful to families, but it has to be the 180th day. We would have to wait until the very end of April in order to say, oh, let's do it on the Monday, which we don't want to do that anyway. But when we do it in March, we have to be the 180th day of school, at least.
Mike?
So Tony, we're doing it now because we're assuming snow days are passed for the most part. Is that why we're doing this now?
No, they
Part of
actually
this,
changed legislation. So graduation date is hard. It doesn't change. So once you vote on it tonight and it's the 17th, even if we had a week of snow days, they're still going to graduate on the 17th.
Okay, but why do we do it in March then?
It's just always, it has been in March traditionally on the agenda plan. And I think it's because people start asking because you have people that fly in from all over the place and they want to get their air tickets booked and they start booking restaurants and all the things that go along with graduation.
Could we set it earlier?
You could set it earlier, but then if you have snow, you do run the risk because if we set it earlier and we have 5 days of snow, we would have to come back and adjust it again.
Plus the anticipation so fun.
Yeah, I mean, who would show up at our March meeting otherwise unless we were talking about a pool, maybe? I don't know. So with that, exactly. Well, at least, unfortunately his elephant didn't join him this evening. I was hoping to see one in his swim cap and some goggles, but all right. So next time with that, I'd like to, move to take a vote. So all those in favor of setting it the 17th? Okay, that is unanimous as 7-0. Hurrah. So families of soon-to-be high school graduates, start calling your restaurants to make reservations now. Okay, so that leads us to the next action item, the last day of school. So I'd like to make a motion to set the last possible day of school for the 2024 school year as Tuesday, June 17th, which includes 5 snow days and Monday, June 16th as a final day for grades 6 and 9, inclusive of 5 snow days. Do I have a second? Okay, Jen Bat. Oh, okay. So does anybody have, Tony, did you want to say something? Looked like you had.
I think I said it before, but this is a date that could change. So if we had a nor'easter, knocked all the power out, we were out of school for 5 days, we would have to add 5 days to the calendar.
We have 5 built in when we make the calendar, right? So this is the 180th day. We've had 1 snow day thus far this year. So we had to, instead of the 4 built in, 5 built in yet, now we're getting rid of the 4. Any other questions, comments? Anyone? Going once, going twice? Okay, ready to vote? All in favor of setting the last possible day of school as Tuesday, June 17th, including those 5 snow days, and June 16th for grades 6 and 9 as they start a day earlier. Again, unanimous, 7-0. Fantastic. Woo-hoo! So now we're moving on to agenda plan discussions. I'll hand this reins over to Dr. Jones and any other input? I haven't, I'll be honest, I have to look at a little more in depth, but I do know that we need to add some sort of professional development for the board. And I was going to reach out to the board members to take some suggestions on what they might be interested in doing some professional development on. It's part of our board goals. I know we talked about some other topics that we might want to dig a little deeper into, and I guess we can look into when to add those, if we should do that this year or give some more time. An update on pre-K curriculum. Is that what you were asking about? Pre-K discussion on pre-K and, okay.
I know I've mentioned before, Dr. Jones and I got to talk early this week, and I know she's preparing, hopefully that in April we can have my long-awaited field usage conversation, which I think is apt.
That's why I looked over at you when I was asking, because I knew that you wanted to add that.
And then, sorry, while I have it, we're scheduled in May for the academic update on school improvement plans. Based on what we said earlier, I wonder if at that same meeting, we could also maybe have a similar update on literacy like we had on STEM tonight. I know Mark left, but it seems apropos to get an update on that.
Yeah, I think the best thing to do though is to, before we pick a date to ask about, let's see what Mr. D'Amico thinks would, give him the appropriate time to get what, information he needs together. Anyone? Bueller? No one else? No others? Okay, perfect. Well, as the board knows, they can always reach out at any time to ask about adding stuff. So with that, Dr. Jones, do you have anything else you want to add before we ask for the favorite motion of the night?
Not at this time.
Okay. Who wants to make the favorite motion of the night? Sophie?
I
like
would
to
like to
rotate
make a
it.
motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Laura, all in favor? Awesome. Oh, wait, nope. Somebody's busy texting. Okay. 7-0, another unanimous vote. Love it. Thank you all and good night.